If that hasn't gotten people to wake up yet, what will? Wake up and realize these people don't care about you. The Libertarian Party is the only party that actually cares about your rights to liberty and freedom. What's up, North Carolina, and welcome back to the Liberty Inc. podcast, your source to all things liberty in NC. I'm your host, Mike Ross, and with me today is Patrick Bowersox. You may recognize him from season 1 last year, but he is the vice chair of the Wake County Libertarian Party. He is the national vice chair of Outright Libertarians, and more recently, he is the candidate, the Libertarian candidate for North Carolina Senate Seat 17. Patrick, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming back on. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be on again with you, Mike, and great to be on again with everybody. And look forward to chatting it up a bit and kind of delving into some stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited. And since you are a repeat guest, I get to just completely ignore the first question that I normally ask everybody, because I already asked you last time. What brought you to libertarianism? So since we can kind of skip on that one, last time we talked a lot, just about your work with Outright and things there. This is, the first time I've had a chance to chat with Patrick Bowersox, the candidate. So I really want to focus now. I was really impressed with the slate of candidates coming out of Wake. You guys are doing great things in the county. And I really want to talk about your campaign, right? We're here, and I think that most Americans are getting pretty fed up with the Uniparty. And I think more and more people, I think it might have been Ray at the last convention who was saying that now in North Carolina there are more that unaffiliated is the largest group of voters in North Carolina. That there's more unaffiliated, which means, in my opinion, it means that they're sick of both sides of the Uniparty and they're open to ideas. I know I'm biased as a libertarian, but I think that we in the Libertarian Party have great ideas. So Patrick, I'd love to chat, with your, goal to join, NC Senate. What are you, talk to me, I guess, what separates you from the competition, right? So I know there's a couple of seats in Wake that are actually only going against one. But are your race, you're competing with both a Republican and a Democrat, if I'm correct?
Yes. I'm going against a Republican and a Democrat. Basically what I want to do is, I want to make government more of like a friend who guides you along the way and helps you to succeed in your personal life and business, your finances, everything. I feel like for too long, the Republicans and the Democrats are those two parents that keep holding you back from your dreams, holding you back from succeeding. Maybe not intentionally, but with some of the legislation they pass at times, some of the laws, and I'm not saying it's not with good intent. They may have the best intent with it, but right now we're in challenging times. Inflation is going rampant, and we're going to start to get to times where our paychecks are going to be even tighter than they are now. So I think it's time to look at things in a different way and try to approach things from a different way.
Yeah, no, I like it. And, you mentioned, kind of government being those overbearing parents. I feel like that's such a good one, right? Like, they're different about what they want out of you. Maybe mom wants you to be a doctor and dad wants you to be a lawyer. But it really seems like mom is going to make it really hard if you're trying to be a lawyer, and dad's going to make it really hard if you're trying to be a doctor. You kind of got to do what they want. And, I know that, you envision, hey, government, let's stop doing this and let's maybe help this individual become whatever they want to become, as opposed to what we want them to become. So in contrasting that, I'd love to know, since you've got kind of both a Republican and a Democrat fighting for the same seat, what would voters, and I get that most of the viewers and listeners of this podcast are libertarians, right? That's our target market as a podcast of the party. But what really separates you from your direct candidates, right? There's 3 people in this race. Why is Patrick Bowersox the best for Wake County?
I really think because I work in the real world segment.
Right.
I can't say that my two opponents necessarily do. I mean, I understand what it's probably like to having to go on a tight paycheck, etc. I understand these things, and I want to make things better for those types of people, and I also want to make things better for everybody. I mean, I want to. I think I'm going to take. I know I'm going to take a look at approaching everything with fairness and equality for all when I make decisions, because I want the decision to be the best for all North Carolinians, not just my constituents. I want it to be the best for everybody
You know, I,
to succeed.
I like that, and so many politicians, and and I can't just put the finger at one side either, because both of the establishment parties, it's they have their interests, and they really don't seem to care about everybody else, right? If you're their donors or you're their quote unquote base, they're gonna at least at least in how they campaign, forget how they actually govern, because the reality is both of them get in there and they ignore all their promises they make to anybody and really do whoever whoever special interests paid to get them elected. But I know you talked about kind of equality for everybody, and that's super important. And there's a few things that I think really come into play that I think a good libertarian voice is needed. And one of those is criminal justice, right? That's a big issue where we see a lot of disparity, right? A lot of disparity in how people are treated. And you kind of, hit the nail on the head where, like, as a working class person who, is not ultra wealthy, if you got into some trouble that maybe one of your, wealthy competitors did the exact same thing, the criminal justice system is pretty disparate in how they handle different things. Now, libertarians, and I say this to everybody, there's a lot of different thought within libertarianism. We generally all want the government to get a little bit smaller, but I may want the government to be a lot smaller than you. I probably do. I'm one of the more radical anarchist libertarians, and there's a lot that are nowhere near as far as that goes. But talking about criminal justice reform, what does that really look like tangibly? If we fast forward to next year and Patrick Bowersox gets elected and you are representing North Carolinians in the NC Senate, what kind of criminal justice reform do you think is most urgent, and how would you go about bringing on that change?
Well, we want to look at stuff like qualified immunity, the cash bail system for sure.
Okay.
The cash bail system is just ugh. Don't even get me started on that. We don't have time to delve into it. And also civil asset forfeiture. I mean, it's almost like you're guilty before proven innocent. Nobody has a right to seize your property. You have to. It's just it so frustrates me that I can't even collect my words. But we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And this is not necessarily what's happening.
Well,
And it's disparaging and disheartening.
Well, the civil asset forfeiture in particular, I saw some statistics that I looked at, and I'll admit I saw it out there. I didn't fact check it, but it sure seems believable, especially with some trends I saw from a few years before that. But I think it was just last year that the total value of property stolen through civil asset forfeiture actually exceeded the total value stolen by criminal enterprises. So, at this point, the number one thief in the United States is the United States, right? As far as, and a lot of people don't realize that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that civil asset forfeiture, at least as they enshrine it, is kind of a civil thing, or I'm sorry, a federal thing, and that a lot of times the locals don't, but they have this backdoor kind of grease each other's wheels kind of arrangement that is involving more localized police.
There are certain states that have approached it and basically nixed it. Okay. I know Connecticut was one of them. Connecticut was one of the first ones to do it, to eliminate civil asset forfeiture and it unanimously went through the House, the Senate, and the governor's desk, which was very good.
And they don't even collaborate with the federal agencies to do it anymore. They've have they fully banned it, or?
As far as I know, there was an article, and you can quote me. I believe it was a few years ago.
Okay. But
Connecticut was one of the first states to approach this and basically go, this isn't right. And I'm hoping it'd be nice if this state could come to their senses on that issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great, because I've seen so many just horror stories where,
And the state may not be able to do anything about it, but at least they could make a stance on it,
Yeah. I mean, well, if Connecticut did it, right, maybe we just kind of template or your model template legislation after whatever they did, right? If it's kind of banning, because I know a lot of them, some people were talking about how maybe their city or their state doesn't allow civil asset forfeiture, but what they do is, like if a local cop or highway patrol pulls you over with a bunch of cash that they want to seize, they just call like the DEA, right? Or some federal agency and be like, okay, you guys come seize these assets, and then we get a kickback. You send 50% of it to our police department. And it's like, how is that any different from you guys just taking it in the first place, right? It's just an extra step. But it's still theft. Along the lines there, qualified immunity, let's just be real clear on this. A lot of times people talk about qualified immunity only in the scope of policing, but qualified immunity applies to not just police officers. It also applies to judges. It applies to lots of layers of government. Do you want to see qualified immunity stripped across the board? Or how would you like to see that legislatively done?
Well, we're gonna have to see if I were elected, we're gonna have to see the pulse of to see how much we could get done.
Okay.
To get done, because obviously, unfortunately, you have to kind of come to some compromises and get to a starting point. But I'd like to at least get to a starting point with it.
So kind of start at the police level.
I realize that as much of a libertarian as I am, as I like to strip it bare and start all over again, that sometimes isn't always the most realistic answer that we can give.
Well, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's very different for you as a candidate than it is for me as, an ANCAP who, kind of would, see all the systems, broken down. I get that that's not a feasible position, nor even probably the most mainstream within Libertarian. But I'm glad the LP has a home for me with my radical views on that one. Let's talk. When we were chatting a little bit, kind of catching up before this, you talked about what I think is a really important and what I think is a winning issue in Wake County in North Carolina, and that's around reducing red tape for small businesses and things like that. I think, we've seen, we've seen red tape in this area for a while. I'm a small business owner. I can tell you I sure deal with a whole bunch of red tape for things that I think are pretty trivial. What does that look like for you, as far as your campaign and how you would act as a legislator as far as reducing red tape for North Carolinians? What are some of those ideas?
Well, it could start with maybe reducing some of the tax burden some of these small businesses have to pay.
Okay.
Maybe looking at seeing some of these permits and stuff and certifications may not be needed. We need to take a close look at everything and go like, hey, are these things with good intent? Even with good intent, are these things hindering our small business owners from being as successful as they can? And I really think we need to take a look at it now with, like I said, with the inflation going the way it is right now. It doesn't look like there's going to be a way out anytime really, really soon. And we're paying almost $5 for a tank of gas now. So, I mean, the transportation key is high and everything. So I think we need to take a close look at everything and just go, hey, are some of these certifications and regulations really needed? And some of this tax burden really needed for our small business owners?
Well, I have to say you hitting on kind of reducing red tape and taxes is a pleasant surprise when, and I've heard actual politicians lately try to tell me that the solution for these high gas prices was to go buy a $50,000 electric vehicle. Where
that's not realistic at all.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of what it's nice to see people. And granted, it's I guess a lot more likely coming from a real person, right? Someone who is the working class, who experiences the struggles. I can't imagine that most of these, people coming up with some of these ideas of, just buy an electric car are really in a situation where they've had to struggle recently with any of these things. So tax reduction, reducing the complexity of like licensing requirements. Like, I was talking to Matthew Lazak a couple weeks ago. And, he was talking about something similar, like with this environment where we have all of these different occupational licenses and things like that, where it's not saying, I guess some people might kind of take that whole thing out of context. And it's not saying like we want unlicensed doctors, right? Like where it's just, if I do nails, right? If I want to start a business doing nails, really the only thing that should matter is, do I do nails well? And does somebody want to pay me for it, right? Because I see these cases where you may have someone, who has a skill or a trade that they've been doing for years. Maybe even they did it in another country. They come here and now all of a sudden the government's saying you need to do so many thousand hours of work, and that all costs money, right? Like, why is the government trying to determine, whether you're qualified to give somebody a haircut or not, right? Like, don't you think that should be up to the person who gets a haircut? Like, I've had a bad haircut in my life, right? Thankfully it grows back, at least at this point in my life. It might not always, but, that's one of the things that I think, it makes me wonder, why is government there? And I guess it goes back to kind of that opening thought that you had of kind of government being overbearing parents, right? So, another thing that I wanted to talk about, which I know that I think you'll be happy to talk about. I know we're kind of doing this as the candidate, Patrick Bowersox, but, knowing from our conversations and our hanging out, and as well as knowing that you're the national vice chair of Outright, there's something there that I think is a big issue. And we talked about it last time you were in the podcast on last year on season 1, and that's the panic defense, right? And specifically, the way you talk about freedom for everyone, right? Rights for everyone. It doesn't matter how small of a group they are, what percentage of the population. It's freedom for everyone, and libertarians truly believe that. Liberty for everyone. There's no exclusions to that. It's not freedom for you if you're rich, or freedom for you if it's freedom for everyone. On that, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. Have there been any updates here in North Carolina? Anything breaking on that front? And how would we approach that? As a legislator, how do we make this an issue?
There has been talks of it. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, a lot of these bills need to get both Republican and Democratic support to be brought up.
Right.
And there has been Democratic support, but there's been no Republican support as far as I know of.
Okay.
That's not to say that it's not possible to get it. I also think that if you brought a libertarian to the mix, I think we could probably sit down with some of these Democrats and Republicans who really aren't sold and go, hey, you know what? Y'all are here to represent everybody. You're not here to represent just your constituents. Right. You're here to represent everybody, and their tax dollars are paying for you.
Yeah.
Whether I want to cut taxes or et cetera, but we're paying your salary is being paid by by the people you represent.
Yeah.
And you're here to represent everybody, not just the ones you want to represent.
Sure.
And it's not fair to not represent everybody. And if injustice and things are more vulnerable to others, that ain't cool.
No, not at all.
That ain't cool.
Has there been
the GSM community deserves just the same equal rights as everybody else, and they don't deserve to be used as a pawn.
Absolutely not. And that's one of the things that I feel like too many politicians kind of do that with a lot of marginalized groups, right? Where they'll run on, appealing to a group, right? Whether it's because they think identity politics is, a powerful tool to get them elected or whatever. But then they get into office and they don't actually do anything about it. And I've seen Republicans do it at the state level all the way up to the national. I've seen Democrats do it at the state level all the way up to national. I know that, where's our student loan forgiveness, right? I hate to say it, I still have some student loans, and I voted for Joe and not Joe without the E, right? Not Joe with the E. But since Joe with the E won, I thought I was promised some student loan forgiveness that I didn't get. But I'm not really mad about it because we can't really afford it. But I feel like that's what happens far too often is politicians will run on these. On being an advocate for something, and then once they get elected, they kind of ignore that. Have there been any developments in other states? I know when we last spoke, you were kind of giving. I think the issue was the one in Tennessee. I think was the one that was kind of right.
Yeah, there has not. Well, thank goodness the judge did not let the individuals use that defense.
Yes.
I mean, murder's murder.
One good update from last year's podcast, since that was still going on.
I don't see any it doesn't look like there's any legislation passing in Tennessee about it.
Okay.
But it's good to know that the judge was like, hey, you know what? You murdered this guy. You premeditated it. You clearly ain't using this. No way. No way, no how. A lot of states have, but it's very loose. It's not a very firm thing. I think that obviously we're not even at a starting point in North Carolina with passing anything.
Right.
It's unfortunately gonna need Republican support, or if you want to just go ahead and elect a Libertarian, we could probably get something done.
Well, I think the thing is, if North Carolina would start electing Libertarians, they'd realize that they could get a lot done on a lot of places, because we'd be able to kind of challenge both of the established parties as well as work with them on the issues that they're right on, right, and try to build that gap around that. Going on that one, I thought about this, let's take one step back, because we talked a little bit about the panic defense and the impact of the GSM community, but I'm under the assumption I had our last conversation last year, right? There may be some viewers who did not listen to that one. Why don't you give us kind of a quick run through for someone who may not know what the panic defense is and what we're talking about? Just give somebody a quick explanation of what that is.
Basically, what the panic defense is it would be that somebody was so angered that somebody would have been gay or lesbian or transsexual, that they just went so enraged that you were part of that community, or that was what you are, that they caused you to make a rash decision and personally harm somebody. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what it is. And people have used it in court. It has not. Unfortunately for a lot of people, it hasn't been used. But the fact that it could be used is kind of concerning. Right. And you would hope that most people, the great majority of people, would just throw that out right off the bat, and just go, hey, you know what? This ain't gonna fly. Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, it's using somebody's personal, somebody's lifestyle or gender choice against them in the court of law, and trying to get off innocent for committing a crime because of this.
Right. Yeah,
and it boggles my mind how it could even be allowed.
And we that was one of the things where we talked about it, I think, last time, where is the solution, do we try to go down the route of legislative, or do we go down the route of like the bar, right, like the private industry, and just say, hey, just forget government, if the government won't ban it because it's too much to get done there, is it something that we band together with activists and just go to the bar associations and just say, look, this is not a valid tactic. Don't let lawyers use it, right? Like, then you don't even need government as the solution. If the bar association says this is not valid, you cannot go down this route, then lawyers aren't going to use it because they don't want to get disbarred, right? I mean, I still think I still think the whole idea is crazy, right? Because I know that example in Tennessee was basically, if I have my facts straight, and again, it's been a year, but if I had my facts straight, it was basically a gay man hit on a straight man, right? And that was what happened, is he hit on him. And you would think that a reasonable person, if someone came, I'm straight, I'm married, I've been married, almost 17 years. Someone came to hit on me, I'd be like, hey, I'm flattered, thank you, but I'm married, and I'm not interested. But thanks for putting a smile on my face, right? Like, I'm flattered.
Exactly.
But what happened in Tennessee, like, that happened, and then this person just was so enraged by this that they murdered. Like, this person murdered someone for hitting on him. Like, it's mind blowing, and I'm so thankful that the judge threw that BS out. And I'm going to try to keep the cursing down, since this is a candidate.
Oh no, I mean, it's enraging. BS is the appropriate word for it.
Well, yeah. Well, without using the letter abbreviation is the appropriate way to say it. But I'm going to keep it PG, since I've got a candidate on here. If you wanted to clip anything for promoting. Yeah. No, so that I mean, I think that's still a great fight. Is there any states that kind of have done like template legislation, or is there any state that is kind of leading the way on this that we could try to maybe follow? A
lot of states have passed. A lot of the New England states have passed it. I know Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont have legislation on the books.
Okay.
As well as California and a few other states. It's I would say it's almost about 14 or 15 that have some kind of legislation on the books. There are some states, like I know Texas the governor there is passing some stuff that's kind of hindering the GSM community, particularly the trans community, very hard. But I know that some states are on the books, and actually, if you Google it, there are maps that show, like it'll be like states that have already passed something that would be in blue, states that have stuff within legislation are green, and then they'll have states that are in like a different color. So it may be all different colors, but there'll be like a little chart of stuff that states that have passed, states that are working towards something, and then states that don't have anything on the books.
Okay. No, awesome. Well, that's one of the things that I think, Outright's doing great work with as an organization, and kind of keeping that out there. So, again, I think at the end of the day, the panic defense specifically, I don't even know how anybody could even think to bring that up as an actual defense. Like, I'm not sure I get the logic or the thought process, or how there's any legal standing for it. But sadly, it is a reality that it exists, and it has been tried. So I think that stopping it one way or the other, I'm very much more on the anarchist side, probably way more government reduction than you. So I mean, I probably would personally prefer the route of like getting the bar association, but that's mainly just because I'd rather see no laws, right? But
I would like to, if elected, I'd like to get something done.
Yeah.
I mean, if that means working with the bar association to get something done, hey, I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm okay with the legislation. Again, not everybody has to be an anarchist in the LP.
I'm okay. My biggest goal is I'd like to see an improvement in this state over that issue.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it all. I'd like to see it happen tomorrow. I'd love to see it happen tomorrow, but it just ain't moving. The needle ain't moving, and it needs to start moving.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I'm in a lot of caucuses, but I'm a member of Outright as well, because I think that at the end of the day, if you're not standing up for the rights of the most marginalized people, are you really standing up for anybody's rights? I hate to say that, but that's the reality. Is it's easy to stand up for your own rights. It's real easy to stand up for your own rights, and I think most people will do that. The question is, will you stand up for the rights of other people? And that's where I've really tried to shift my focus as an activist, even, in finding places where I can amplify the voice of people who need it the most, because maybe they don't have the raw numbers, right? So I think of, the GSM community, the deeply impoverished community, like the homeless communities. There's a lot of marginalized groups. And again, I'm not an identity politics person by any means, so I'm not using it from that standpoint. I just look at it as, if people need help and people's rights are being abused by government, we need to step in as human beings and do the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Said it right, Mike. You gotta stand up for each other,
And I want to focus, because I know these are kind of bigger national issues, right? Ending qualified immunity, ending civil asset forfeiture, the panicked events. Some of those things are there. I want to kind of narrow the focus a little bit for kind of the second half of the interview, and kind of thinking through, at the end of the day, you're running in Wake County, right? So those Wake County voters, if we're going to make Patrick Bowersox part of the NC Senate, Wake, we're calling on you. We need you to get out the vote, and we need you to check that box next to Patrick's name. What are some of the biggest things that are really affecting Wake specifically? Like, if you look in your district, right, and I know you said you want to represent all North Carolinians, and that's important, and I know that you will. But if we want to win, right, we have to really appeal towards your district, right? What are some of the biggest issues in that district that you're going to want to fight for?
Well, I do believe education's a big thing as well. Okay. And hey, and if you want to put your kids through public school, I want to support you in that. If you want to put your kids through private school, charter school, I want to support you in that. I want to make all North Carolina schools the best. I want you to have good choices. I want you to have to think about that. All of them are such good choices that, I want you to go, wow, I don't know if I can go wrong with any of them, my brother's a teacher. So, my brother and I talk all the time, and believe me, I understand. I may not understand directly what a lot of teachers have to go through, but it's a lot of hard work. I mean, these men and women are educating our children, and they need a fair shake as well. Yeah. And they need to cut the red tape, and maybe some of these people up above in the education system need to start treating some of these teachers a little bit better, and listen to some of the stuff that they're probably going through. Not that maybe they care, but they maybe need to hear some of the stuff that they're going through, and and some of the work that they're putting in, and
Yeah, I mean, education's pretty important and big for me. So I'm actually a homeschool teacher. So I have a 10-year-old who's in the 5th grade, and I made the decision to homeschool when COVID hit. And I think school choice is really a winning issue that I think libertarians have been on for a while, right? But it's funny to see now that I've seen both Republicans and Democrats lately pushing for it. I think, Cooper, Governor Cooper, sorry, I think if I just say Cooper, most North Carolinians will know who I'm talking about. But Governor Cooper, recently declared school choice week in North Carolina, right? But then I had to laugh at it because as a homeschool teacher, they're also looking at legislation that's going to make my life a lot harder, where I'm going to have to report all this more stuff. And I look at that and I'm like, look, I'm an engaged parent. I promise you, I care way more about my kids' education than any government does, right? Than the federal, than local. I promise you, you don't care more about my kid than I do, government, regardless of how much you think they do. And I want him to have a good education way more than you do. But they're kind of, trying to shoot it at both ends. And in my opinion, I think that a lot of the mainstream, and uniparty politicians, they use school choice because it's a buzzword, right? And they throw this out there, but they have a whole bunch of different meanings for it. Like some are like, some the dollars are going to follow the student, right? So if you take your student out of the public school and they go to a private school, the dollars follow the student. That's what some have said, and then some have kind of called for even more radical things. I look at it, and I get that I'm not a candidate, so it's easy for me to say I would want public education to be completely abolished. I don't think that's a mainstream libertarian position by any means, and I know there's plenty of libertarians. In fact, I would probably say most libertarians don't go that far. I just look at it as like a pure capitalist. Like you said it was your brother who is a teacher?
Yeah, my brother's a teacher, yeah.
So I look at the public school system, right? Who does most of the actual work? It's the teachers, right? They're the ones that are doing the labor, showing up, instilling the education. But you have like these regional or district administrators, right, who spend no time at all with students. And they're raking in some of the highest salaries within the district, right? Six-figure salaries. And they're providing, and again, maybe someone's going to argue with me on this one, but I would say they're providing no real value to the education of children. And I just see it as, like my neighborhood. I'll just use my neighborhood's like 170 units, and I just look at it as, there's a public school teacher right down there. I have great conversations with him. I think he's drastically underpaid for the work he does. But I look at it and say, if you had this true system where there was no public education system and he just wanted to set up his own micro school, right? There's probably 30 kids in my neighborhood of various ages. But can you imagine how much money he would make if he just said, I'm going to set up this micro school? Think of the convenience. The kids don't have to get on a school bus. They just walk to their local teachers because it's a small, close community. He'd make so much more money. The kids would get a better ratio of attention. I just think there's so many free market solutions that we need to just open it up and allow competition, right? And I get it.
I agree with you there. Yeah. I think competition is going to make everybody better.
Right. Let the public schools, if they're going to exist,
make everybody better. Make all the parents' options better.
Yeah. That's the thing. I feel like, competition has worked wonders in so many areas, except for the two areas where they really don't allow competition anymore: education and healthcare.
We'll get on to healthcare next.
Yeah. Well, let's go there. So we, right now we're for criminal justice reform, ending civil asset forfeiture call immunity, getting something in solid against the panic defense, reducing red tape, school choice, and let's move on to healthcare. What are the healthcare issues, and how will Patrick Bowersox offer some innovation and solutions? Because I think healthcare is a mess.
One of the things leading to my plan for healthcare is I want to at the very least, get marijuana legalized medicinally in the state level. At the very least, hey, listen, I realize that we may be so far away to legalize it recreationally, but if we can legalize it medicinally and help some of these people out who are suffering from HIV, AIDS, cancer, some of these kids with epilepsy, if we can get some help to some of these people.
Yeah,
that to me is what should be important. You should be looking at that, and people are suffering. People are hurting right now with terrible diseases, and especially when you bring in kids into the mix. Come on, you got to have a heart and a soul to not want to help people.
What's crazy is that I was talking to another weight candidate, and they had some statistics on this very issue because it's a big part of their platform as well. And to me, it's mind-blowing that we don't have that in North Carolina already, because I think it was something like over 70% of the population approves of medicinal marijuana in North Carolina. That is an over 2/3 majority of the population. That is overwhelming support by really any measure, right? You get 2/3, over 70% of popular support on anything. If you have an actual democratic system, that's going to win. The problem is that even the people that run on this stuff, I think that, if you really look at why marijuana is illegal, in my opinion, And maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I just see it as following the money. And I see it as Big Pharma doesn't want this plant that makes many of their profit-leading products obsolete to exist, and they especially don't want it to exist in a way where you can grow it in your backyard for pennies. So
perfect example. I take medicine for my allergies because I have terrible allergies.
Yeah.
My medicine went up 40% in 1 year. Same medicine I've been taking for years. I went to go pay for it. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And they're like, oh yeah, same healthcare plan, same everything, but it went up. It went up 40%.
It just makes me wonder, like when they do some of these things, and with the overwhelming support, what do you think? What do you think that looks like? Because I look around the country, right, and they haven't done anything at the federal level, but we see more and more states essentially pursuing this idea of nullification, right? We're seeing it in a lot of different issues in a lot of different areas, right? In both red areas and blue areas. We see it in the form of, sanctuary cities, right? Where they're basically saying we're going to ignore federal immigration laws, or we see it in Second Amendment sanctuaries, right? Where they're saying, yeah, we don't care what the ATF says, own your machine gun without a tax stamp and we're not going to arrest it for you. We're seeing, and then we're seeing it a lot in the marijuana. All of the states that have legalized it medically or recreationally are essentially nullifying federal law. As far as enforcement goes. And this has been a big conversation piece with a lot of libertarians. But how far off do you think we are in North Carolina? Because this seems like a win that I feel like we could be relatively close to.
The concerning part about North Carolina is there's not an overwhelming. Usually, what it takes is you need to have one side overwhelmingly in support of it. And at Wake LP, we had Allison Dahl speak to us, and she's a big supporter of medicinal marijuana and a personal friend.
Yeah,
she's a Democrat, but she's a good lady and a good friend, and I think she cares about her constituents. And Travis and I consider her a personal friend, even though we don't agree on everything. But sure, she's kind enough to keep an open dialogue with Travis and myself.
If I only associated with libertarians, I'd be a pretty lonely person because there's not enough of us, Patrick. I got to be friends with Democrats and Republicans. I don't have to agree with their bad ideas, but I'm not going to hold them against them.
But from what she said, it's there's not one side yet overwhelmingly in support of it. So hopefully we can get some more people elected. Hopefully we want libertarians, but hopefully we can get some more people elected who are sympathetic to this issue.
Yeah.
And like I said, move the needle on this and get us to at least where we're getting it passed on a medicinal level.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it full recreational, but medicinal level at the very least to start.
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
you got to have a starting point.
Absolutely, and I think I think the big win would be if the federal government did something about it and settled it.
Yeah, but absolutely.
But I don't really count on the federal government doing much of anything useful. So.
Yeah, well, they settled the marriage issue. The Supreme Court, not necessarily agree with it, but I think if you take a perspective of looking at things that is this a way that eliminates a lot of the gray matter and a gray area in a situation? And I think that's an important thing to me as a libertarian. Yeah. I don't want a lot of gray matter with legislation and stuff that I'm a part of. I want it to be clear, concise. What how it affects you. You're going to be protected, and that's what I want.
Yeah, no. So okay, so outside of marijuana, I know, and man, we could probably go for like 10 hours just on the topic of healthcare, but I know, one of my big complaints personally with healthcare is the lack of price transparency, right? Like it's there's very few industries where, you go to buy a car and you drive out with your new car and you find out what it costs after you pulled off the lot, right? Like that doesn't happen anywhere. But it happens almost unanimously in healthcare. It's almost impossible to know how much things are going to cost. I think that's one of the bigger problems. But how do we fix healthcare? It's you've got some saying you've got some saying kind of completely reform it. You've got the Democrats pushing for, well, not even just the Democrats, but some sides of it, single payer Medicare for all. I'm not sure I agree, but that's a solution. What's kind of I guess the other big things that we would try to do in fixing healthcare?
We need to look at a lot of preventative care stuff. I think that we need to maybe find some way, like there might be stuff like I know I go to Hand and Stone like once every 3 months and get a massage. I mean, because it's good for your circulation, good for your stress level and stuff. I mean, I think stuff like that's important. Have a gym membership, exercise. Something getting people trained nutritionally, how to eat right and stuff. Because a lot of people don't know how to eat right and eat healthy. And I'm not saying the government, but let's start looking at things that are helping us, and maybe the prescription prices are ridiculous.
Sure.
So we need to start looking at an open marketplace for prescription drugs. That would be a good starting step. Why do I have to just go to CVS to buy my prescriptions when CVS is the most expensive pharmacy, and it's been known for years they're the most expensive. When I used to go to a local pharmacy in Cary, and it was a family-owned business, and they would give me coupons from the purveyor, but my insurance company sent me these nasty notes that, hey, this will be the last time we cover it if you don't do this, and allow more things like I'm going to say single care. Single care is great. I don't know if you're familiar with single care, the prescription coupon. You save up to 80% on the on prescription drugs, and they show you where the cheapest pharmacies are in your area.
Okay, I use something GoodRx is what I use. Similar thing where they kind of got a network. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most common sense libertarian solutions that libertarians can look at and pretty objectively just say, it doesn't matter if you're just a little bit on the libertarian or if you're full blown anarchist, where you look at it and say, hey, maybe we should just open up all markets, right? International markets. Like if there's a pharmacy that's in Canada or in Mexico that's going to provide me my medicine cheaper, why can't I do that, right? Like, why can't I? And the government gets in the way, and through the layers of bureaucracy they say no to that. And that seems like just a pretty straightforward, real simple solution. Fix this one thing and we're able to get prescription prices down. And then,
well, why can't I just see a nurse practitioner? If I know I have strep throat, why can't I just go see a nurse practitioner? Why do I have to go see the doctor?
Yeah.
Why can't I just go see a nurse practitioner? But then again, this teledoc thing is great.
Yeah.
Just tell them the symptoms. Go, oh yeah, you got strep throat. I call the pharmacy. You get your antibiotics, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So more competition, I think, is exactly what we need in healthcare too.
Yeah.
Open up international marketplaces for prescriptions. Look at things like single care and GoodRx coupons and stuff. And I actually, tell you the truth, I've been using my single care card more than going through the insurance because it's been cheaper.
Yeah, I've used it for a couple of things. It's funny. I'm a financial planner, but my wife is like the frugal one. Like I'm frugal, but she's like really frugal, and it's funny where anytime I'm going to fill prescriptions, she's like, all right, take the insurance card, but take the GoodRx card too, because sometimes it might be cheaper than your copay if you use this one. And I'm like, okay, so it's gonna save me like $10, but it's smart. And I'm almost talking from a place of privilege there that that I'm able to ignore $10.
$10, that's a pizza.
Yeah,
that's a pizza. That's a meal. That's a meal for a week. That's a meal for a night.
Yeah,
you just saved yourself a meal for a night and a prescription costs.
Right, it's true. It's true, and that's a simple change too. And the funny thing is that one doesn't even really recover government to do anything other than just like stop getting in the way. I guess that's going back to the whole reducing red tape on business, right? Is that's part of the red tape that they have to overcome. Well, Patrick, I know I've been I try to be very mindful of everybody's time here, and I know kind of there, so I do want to make sure to kind of cover a few things. One, and at the time of recording this, I know this, but by the time this goes live, hopefully it'll be up. We have hopefully the ability to reach some libertarians as well as hopefully some Republicans, Democrats, and independents. But if they've heard this and they're looking to support you, where can we plug Patrick Bowersox? Where can we plug your campaign, or where can they follow you, or how can we help for either money or volunteers?
I'm going to soon be setting up a Facebook page.
Okay.
Patrick Bowersox for North Carolina. It's going to be we're going to be setting up a Facebook page. We'll also have a Instagram page as well.
Okay.
And we're going to be setting up a website soon. So keep an eye out for that. And then obviously there will be a donation link for that on there. And also we're going to start looking at maybe doing a couple meet and greets with some people in the area, and kind of talk to some of the constituents, and see how we can make be that friend that they need, and stop being that overbearing parent that they want out of their way.
Awesome. Well, we're filming this a little bit before it'll go live. Patrick, at some point once all of this is live, Patrick will let me know and have the links, and as soon as they exist, they will exist in the comments down below. So make sure to either check Patrick out on the website or the Facebook page once it's there. I'm sure anybody who wants to help with boots on the ground for the campaign, I'm sure you would accept those, as well as, of course, financial support. It does take money to win these campaigns and to get our message out there. So I know that Patrick would appreciate that. I'm sure that the Wake LP would appreciate that, and I would appreciate that, because I think that if we're looking to see liberty in our lifetime, we're going to need a heck of a lot more people running and winning as libertarians to get kind of the uniparty to understand that we are the best solution, and that their old stale ideas are not what's best for the country, even though they keep forcing it on us every election.
Well, keep in mind too, Mike, that we can influence a lot more. We can influence some with not by winning as well, because I had a Democrat. Equality wouldn't be such an issue if we didn't lose so many votes to libertarians over the years on stuff like equality, because nobody really approached it. Libertarians always kind of had that in their back pocket, and a lot of people, it may not be a lot to solve. It may not be a lot as it seems, but it's a lot to determine some close elections that some people may have thought they had that person in the bag, but they weighed out all the issues and go, hey, you know what? This issue is important to me, and you're not with me on it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, and I love the LP, and I think that the LP is the way to go. But I said it on this podcast and other ones. At the end of the day, I'm an anarchist. So in an anarchist society, there's really no room for any political parties, because there is no real politics. So at the end of the day, if libertarian candidates can push either incumbents or challengers who win closer to liberty, it may not be the perfect win, but I'll take any wins we can get if they're moving us closer to liberty and further from authoritarianism, especially over the rise of global authoritarianism that we've seen in recent years here. So Patrick, any closing thoughts? We've covered a lot of issues. We've plugged plug the campaign stuff where they can get involved. I like to give closing thoughts to the guests before I wrap it up.
I'm thankful for everybody in the LP. Thankful for Wake LP and, Libertarians all over the triangle. And, I ask that, it doesn't need to be financial help. I mean, if you can help spread the word about liberty and the campaign by talking to your friends about it at work, talk to your neighbors, I will take any help I can get, and I know that we're not the richest party in the world, but I know that, and I'm letting people know that financial help is important, but I need help. Any way people can give it is much appreciated, and I greatly appreciate it. And I know all the candidates around the state and Wake will agree with me that, hey, if you can't help out financially, I get it. But if you can help me out with boots on the ground, talking about the campaign, sharing on Facebook and Instagram, etc., getting the word out, that is just as important as financial help.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, thank you so much. Always a pleasure, man. Hopefully I get to see you next year at convention, since I missed you this year. Maybe we'll find some
hopefully we'll get something going. We're talking about trying to do some outright meetups across the state.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
hopefully Charlotte's a target, because if you get to Charlotte, that's
Charlotte's a target. I'm trying to get Charlotte, trying to do trying to see what I can do. I mean, maybe a Charlotte, maybe a Greensboro, maybe a High Point, maybe something to get everybody in the center and try to get everybody to come get a meetup and meet and greet with some great libertarians and talk about liberty and freedom for all.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure. And to all of our listeners and viewers, thank you so much. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the comments. If you have a question or a comment for me or Patrick, drop them down there. I will make sure that any questions for Patrick get over to him so that he can come back and answer those for you. But thank you so much. I hope you'll consider, as Patrick said, not just donating, or if you can't donate, biggest thing we need, boots on the grounds, sharing, and sharing doesn't cost anything. So make sure to follow his Facebook page, share those out. Thank you so much for listening to the Liberty Inc. podcast. We will see you next week.